Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage and the AZU project. Today I want to continue on the frame reassembling, and the first thing I want to tackle is the suspension pods. At the beginning of this project my plan was just to change one side of it, but then I realized that there was a bit of a hole in one of these right there, and so I have decided to change the entire canister, and hopefully the springs and all that inside is all right. And that is what I'm gonna find out now, because I'm gonna cut it open. I'm gonna cut it in the middle, that way I won't hit anything, I think, but I will try to not go through anything else than just the outer sheet, and then be able to separate them. There we go. At least on the later models, I seem to recall there is a difference in size of these. On the push rod, the one rod is longer than the other one. I better check that and keep track of that. But, right, whoa, it's full of grease. You're not supposed to put grease in here. Or maybe you do on the old versions, I don't know. But normally it's just some kind of castor oil or vegetable oil in here. Not grease, I've never seen that before. I'm just going to take something to pick up all this grease so I don't get it smeared everywhere. I bet someone lost their mind in the past because of squeaking suspension on this one. Oh, I forgot to actually remove this. I have to undo this out here. So we better try to do that now. And this is probably stuck. But then again, so far stuff hasn't been very stuck on this, because it's not a Danish 2CV, it's a French one. And so far that has been a very good thing for this car, because stuff is not rusted completely and fused. Being said, there's some stuck. I think I'm gonna have to put this in the vise. With this in the vise, I will also be able to apply some heat to it, which will probably help. This should expand the outer part of it firstly, and hopefully break the seal. So it ended up soaking overnight, so now I really hope it is possible to undo it. Yeah, it still get quite stuck. Don't look so surprised. Of course it broke. Hello, it is a couple of days later, and I went and visited my good friend in the Citroën world, who has a lot of Citroën parts. Of course, they had a couple of spring pods for the AZU also, and the cylinder heads, which you can see in the background. So I hope to harvest those for the part I need for my own. I need 4, of course, of these rods, and I need these to be, oh, this one is actually, it's starting pretty well. This one is loose already. It's getting tough right now, maybe. Ah, that is fine. Just gonna lube it up a bit. Apparently the problem with the AZU ones are that they are open all the way through, which at first I thought was a good thing, because it was possible to oil it from the top. But the problem is that it makes it possible to rust from the top and from the bottom end, and therefore they are known to get pretty stuck, these ones. Even worse than the normal 2CV ones. But I'm going to harvest these until I get one complete set of parts, springs, pull rods, these pull eyes, and all the other bits. So be back when that is done and I'm ready to continue. Yeah, this is a couple of days later than the previous clip because now I'm ready to reassemble the spring pots, and it has been a bit of a struggle. One thing I want to show you to begin with is I took apart the old spring pots, and on one side these came out. This is the spring for the front end in 3 pieces. I didn't notice when I got the car. I did drive it in and out, and the suspension was working, but the springs was in 3 pieces. So it's a good thing we are doing this because that was really, really bad. But as you saw, I had a lot of problems removing those eyes from this because they are going all the way through, so they rust on the backside. So when you undo them, it goes pretty easy until that rusty piece gets into the thread, and I broke a couple of them. Lucky for me, my neighbor got a lot of spare parts. He's going to save me quite a few times, I think, in this project. There is engine problems, by the way. More on that later. Anyway, I found a couple of spring pots at his place and cut them open and had the same problem a couple of times. But after, I think, 3 spring pots, I got enough parts to make 2 functioning spring pots. Although I did have to buy 1 brand new pull rod because it was impossible to get them off on the front end for some reason. Now I'm ready to start to reassemble, and the first thing I want to do is to weld on an end piece on this tube, and then we can build the first one. I am a welding god. Always remember to not make pretty welds when no one is going to see them ever. Oh, you were not supposed to see this. So I'm just going to mark the spring pot. Actually, they are already marked. As far as I know, the AV on this one means avant, and that is supposed to be front. Unfortunately, I bought 4 of these, and they are all avant. So yeah, I don't have to write it on the front one. But on the rear one, I'm going to put a R for rear in. That way I won't mix them up because the springs and the rods are different length. There we go. And then I just need to fit a front rod and a spring. And put it all through this. Like that. Pull that one through like this. And then of course also the rear one. Like this. And the end piece. There we go. All I need to do is to let it cool down and give it a lick of paint and do the same on the other one, and then tomorrow I can install the first bit on the chassis. Ooh, I am really looking forward to doing that. And with the spring pot welded up and painted, it is now ready to be installed. I actually have to use my knees for something else later in this life, so I'm just going to do like this. Before installing it, I'm going to give it some rust protection behind the spring pot because I cannot access that later on. And yeah, even though this car will never be a winter car, it still will rust like crazy anyway, because that's just the way they are. And then I just need to make sure that I'm facing it the right way. There's the R for rear. So then I can install it. I'm just smearing this pipe with some anti-seize. Then I'm going to slide this rubber donut on. It's to come on. Like that. Before I tighten up the nuts, I'm gonna lubricate the inside of the spring pot. And the only right thing to use for 2CV is hemp seed oil. That's just a joke. But I was told that these need castor oil, vegetable oil, something that doesn't disintegrate the friction material on those cups. Actually, the old one were filled with grease. I have never seen that before, but all the spare ones that I found were also full of grease. Normally on the 2CV it's just oil, and I'm gonna stick with what I know works, and that is hemp seed oil. This plant seems to be very good for 2CVs, or at least for the drivers. Anyway, and I'm gonna add just about half a pint. And then I'm gonna inject it through this. Like that. I'm gonna spin it up good. And then I can tighten them up. And I want it to be snug against the rubber donuts. Then all I need now is to add the rubbers, the protective rubbers. I'm going to install one on the back also. And do the same on the other side. So there we go, both spring pots are now attached to the new chassis. As you can see, I have painted it in some areas where I need to fit stuff. The next thing I want to do is to attach the front axle, and after that the rear axle. I'm currently preparing the front axle right here. As you can see, I haven't sandblasted it and painted it, but I have given it some over-troll oil to convert and stop rust. Not on the hub and the damper though, and not on the steering arms, because I need to fix them, and I will do that when it's on the actual car. So I'm going to attach this on the actual surface of the chassis frame, where the axle bolts on. I'm going to put some grease on, because there's a high chance of scratching the paint when torquing it down and all that. And the grease will act as a self-healing layer to prevent rust. There we go. And 2 new balls, the short ones, and a piece of locking metal. More grease, and I'm gonna grease the thread and also the shaft. And then these are tightened up. To 50 Newton meters. And then I'm going to bend the plate to lock the nut in place. Do the same on the other side, and do the same on the rear axle. So this is the result for today. I'm going to stop here. The axles are on, the suspension pods are on, the chassis got some rust protection, more will come along the way, but it's painted, and as you can see, I also filled all the holes with good liquid rust protection to get out in the edges, but because even though it's painted, the edges where the metal is welded together is not painted, so having some of this that never dries out in there is a good thing. Good piece of progress. Next bit will be to actually attach the suspension, change the kingpin and the bearings on the front. I actually think the rear ones are okay, but inspect them of course. Also need to change the steering arms, because that one is very bent, and I got another one over there, so that's good. But this is going to be all for now. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.